There was a thought in some circles before the draft began that the 49ers might trade up in front of the Saints at number 9 to get Georgia edge rusher Michael Williams. At the end of the day, they didn't have to. Williams fell to the 49ers at number 11. They were able to grab him, and now they can plug him into a defensive line that needs help beyond Nick Bosa. And this is a team that is clearly in transition. They have got to make their picks count in every round, not just round one. So they went with a guy that they think is going to help make the pass rush better. It helps to have Nick Bosa there. Maybe Michael Williams becomes one of the future stars that in a few years the 49ers will be paying big money to as they rebuild the team on the fly. For now, though, they need guys who can come in and make a difference. They got to get these picks right, especially pick number 11. There was a lot of buzz for Michael Williams. The 49ers get him. Now they got to get him ready and see what he can do because they need him to play and produce right away. The Cowboys desperately need help on the offensive line with the retirement of Zach Martin and the departure of other key players in recent years. So they go with the pick that really isn't going to excite the fan base. Does it ever excite the fan base to take an offensive lineman? But you know what does excite the fan base? Having an offensive line that's good enough to allow the rest of the players on offense to do their thing. So Tyler Booker, guard, now a member of the Cowboys. And did you see how happy he was? Because that's where he wanted to go. Sims and I got into it a little bit today because I don't like the sorting hat aspect. I think players should be allowed to go where they choose to go. If the team wants them and they want to go there, boom, it happens. And it happened tonight. The Cowboys drafted a guy who wanted to be in Dallas. He wants to be a Cowboy, even if Cowboys fans wanted them to do something else with the 12th overall pick. They need to improve the offensive line. The days of them having a great line are long gone, and they're not going to be competitive on a consistent basis until they improve it. Booker is the first step along the path to trying to close the gap with a team like the Eagles, which has currently one of the best offensive lines we've ever seen. 13 picks into the 2025 draft, and there have been 2 Michigan defensive tackles taken. At number 5, it was Mason Graham to the Browns, and now it's Kenneth Grant to the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins needing something. They need some edge. They need some oomph. They need some badasses. They need some guys who are going to set the tone. Remember, they let Christian Wilkins walk away in free agency. They didn't even have the cap space to tag and trade him. That's how mismanaged they've been recently. They need picks who can come in and hit, and they need guys who can literally hit and create that edge that they were lacking. They were soft, according to one of their defensive players, when they lost to the Packers on Thanksgiving night. Kenneth Grant, ideally, comes in and gives that defense the kick in the ass it needs, and the team the kick in the ass collectively it needs to try to go from being fringe playoff contender to a team that can get to the postseason and maybe win a game or two when it gets there. The Indianapolis Colts had to be thrilled that the Chicago Bears took Colston Loveland with the 10th overall pick in the draft by making him the first head end off the board. That caused Tyler Warren to slip and slide and ultimately fall to the Colts at number 14. Some people thought that was Warren's floor. If the Colts hadn't taken him there, who knows where he would have gone. But the Colts needing some playmakers on offense, a versatile guy in Tyler Warren, could play a little quarterback if need be, and really, they've needed a quarterback for a while now. In Indy. Maybe Tyler Warren ultimately is the answer at the position that they've been trying to find since Andrew Luck retired in 2019. And when he retired, Tyler Warren was starting his senior year in high school. That's how unsettled it's been for the Colts in recent years. But Warren now a guy who can be very potent, very effective. It takes you back to the days of Dallas Clark. Takes you back to a time when the tight end was a real chess piece. They could do a lot of different things in the offense. That's what they need now. They need more consistent play out of the quarterback position, but if and when they ever get it, they're going to have Tyler Warren around. Thanks to the fact that the Bears took Colston Loveland, the Colts now have a piece that can maybe help them become a team because they've been right around playoff contention the last few years, and they've been there since Andrew Luck retired, but they haven't won a playoff game, and maybe with a guy like Tyler Warren, that will help make a difference in an AFC South that isn't as wide open as it used to be with the presence of the Texans, but it's not a lost cause. The Colts were in it late in 23. They were in it relatively late in 24. Tyler Warren, I'm sure they hope, will make the kind of difference that can push them over the top. When the Falcons were finally on the clock in the 2025 draft, pick number 15, they did not take a quarterback. I know Falcons fans don't like to hear that, but they're the ones who took the quarterback with the 8th overall pick last year when they had just signed Kirk Cousins. So you got to be ready for anything when it comes to the Falcons. This time around, Jalen Walker, the Georgia edge rusher, had fallen, and the Falcons propped him up. He gets to stay close to Athens, gets to play for the Falcons, helps the defense try to get a little bit better. They passed on the opportunity in round one last year, as we know, to improve the defense. They do it this year with Jalen Walker. Michael Penix Jr. now clearly the number one quarterback in Atlanta. They've got some great weapons offensively. They need to make the defense better, especially given that Grady Jarrett is no longer there, even though it's different positions. It's still the pass rush, the defensive line, the front line of the effort to try to slow down other teams. They need that. You can't have every game 52-51. You've got to try to slow down the opposing team. And now the Falcons on their way to making their defense a little bit better with the arrival of Jalen Walker. There's a feeling out there that the Arizona Cardinals are one of those teams sneakily on the rise. What were they going to do with their first overall pick in this draft? The fact that they're at number 16, the bottom of the first half, tells you they're getting a little bit better. They're getting a little bit better. So what are they doing to try to get better? They go with defensive tackle Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. There was a thought at one point he'd be a top 10 guy. There's some questions about his passion for the game. They're going to need to find a way to get the most out of this guy. They're hoping that they have a guy who will become a disruptive force and F up the play guy, a guy who can make a defense go. They need it because even though they've made some strides, they still have a long way to go to be truly competitive in the NFC West. Right now, would they be competing with the Seahawks for third place? Who knows? Where do the 49ers fit? The Rams seem to own that division right now, but regardless, this was the opportunity for the Cardinals to get someone. They're taking a chance on a guy that could have a higher bust potential. I know on the first night of the draft, we don't talk about the guys that might be busts, but if there was one that kind of stands out that many are saying could be a bust, let's see. Hey, Walter Nolan, this is your chance to prove everyone wrong. You fell to 16. Now let's see if you can lift up the Cardinals defense. Bengals pass rusher Sam Hubbard retired earlier this year, and they're still in a contract mess with Trey Hendrickson. He's under contract through 2025. Beyond that, who knows what will happen? Still no sign of a long-term deal, no sign of a trade. But against that backdrop, Bengals at pick number 17 take Texas A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart. Will that lead to a Trey Hendrickson trade? The problem is when they gave him the opportunity to shop himself for a trade, there wasn't anybody out there that wanted to pay him what he was looking for. Bengals, my understanding, offering around $28 million a year. That's a pretty good deal. Maybe Hendrickson takes it. Maybe they hold firm now. And maybe eventually he says, hey, it's still $12 million more than I'm due to make this year in the last year of my contract. Regardless, planning for the future because Hendrickson is 30. They get a young guy who is regarded as maybe a higher prospect than he ended up going at 17. The Bengals trying to balance out that incredible offense with a functioning defense. They need help up front. They get it with Shamar Stewart. It seems like the Seahawks are constantly trying to get a better offensive line. This year, they make an investment in the interior portion of the front wall of blockers with Gray Zabel, North Dakota State offensive lineman, becomes the 18th pick overall in the draft. They need somebody to give Sam Darnold some time to set up and throw for as long as he's the quarterback. Could be 1 year, could be 2 years, could be more than that. They have needed for much more than 1 or 2 years a very good offensive line. It's not a sexy pick. It doesn't excite fans, but it leads to the kind of production, if it works, that can make for a very exciting offense. So kudos from North Dakota State all the way to the Pacific Northwest and the Seattle Seahawks. Gray Zabel, latest member of the Seahawks, and hopefully a guy that can make that offensive line better than it's been. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't really need a receiver. Then again, they don't have a whole lot of needs. This is kind of a luxury pick for the four-time defending NFC South champions who, the year before they started winning the division every year, won the Super Bowl. They've got Mike Evans. They've got Chris Godwin. Now they have Ohio State receiver Emeka Egbuka with the 19th overall pick in the draft. This is a pick for the future, the not-too-distant future. Mike Evans was drafted in 2014. Chris Godwin had the serious leg injury last year, didn't stop the Buccaneers from breaking the bank to keep him around. Egbuka is a guy who's going to take over for one of these two guys. He's going to be part of the future at the position. They wisely grab a great player who can be groomed into becoming as good as Evans and Godwin and continue to provide that offense with something that not a whole lot of teams have. Two great receivers. And the Bucs are one of those teams that, even though they keep winning the division and making it to the playoffs and not embarrassing themselves when they get there, they just get overlooked. They get disregarded. Maybe they'll be taken a little more seriously. And if Igbokwe can make a splash right away and give that offense an even bigger kick, maybe the Bucs will not just get to the playoffs in 2025, but advance a level or two. There had been plenty of talk before the draft that the Denver Broncos would be looking to add a running back. A lot of interest in adding a running back. The missing piece that could maybe supercharge the Denver offense and put the Broncos in position to threaten the Chiefs' stranglehold on the division. Well, nope. Even though they have Patrick Surtain II, the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year, they add Jahdae Barron, cornerback, at pick number 20. Kind of a surprise because we were thinking Omarion Hampton, maybe even Travion Henderson. There was a thought that I heard late in the day that the Broncos possibly would even trade up for Henderson. All that is, what's the word? Bullshit. And we know Sean Payton last year was trying to get people off the idea that he was looking for Bo Nix or anyone other than Bo Nix. He wanted Bo Nix. He was putting out the idea. You know what I mean. Sean Payton, a master at misdirection. Nobody saw this one coming. Makes it easier for the Broncos to ensure that they got the guy they wanted. The Pittsburgh Steelers were the favorites late in the game to be the team that picks quarterback Shedeur Sanders with the 21st selection in the draft. And the way the board fell, the Steelers could have had him. They didn't take him. Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon becomes the latest member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Some thought they would go running back if they didn't go quarterback. That's an area of need as well. Defensive tackle, an area of need. Cam Hayward getting closer and closer to the end of the run. They need some of those guys in the middle that can create disruption and make that defense go. Running back, something that we can look for the Steelers to address later in the draft. Quarterback maybe as well, but remember this, they don't have a second-round pick. They sent it to the Seahawks for DK Metcalf. Now they could trade George Pickens. That's a possibility. Maybe pick up a second or a third-round pick that way. And they still have Aaron Rodgers in the back pocket. I mentioned this earlier on PFT. There's a thought that he's going to sign or at least announce his intention to sign next week after the draft ends with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That would help explain the decision not to take Shedeur Sanders. Even though Mike Tomlin had plenty of good things to say about Sanders. You know, it was 3 years ago. They had Kenny Pickett, the Pitt quarterback, fall to them in the early 20s. They took him and it didn't work out. Maybe they decided we're not going to go that route again. We're going to go with a safer pick in an area where there is a glaring need on the defensive line. That's what they do with Derek Harmon, Oregon defensive tackle, at pick number 21. Jim Harbaugh loves his running backs. Even though he signed veteran Najee Harris in free agency to a one-year deal, there was still a need. Last year they had added Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins in L.A. Now, Omarion Hampton, the North Carolina running back, one of the most highly regarded running backs of the class. Chris Sims had him not all that far behind Ashton Jenney, and the kind of guy that can fuel that offense on the ground. And we know that's what Jim Harbaugh likes to do. There was a thought the Broncos would take him at 20, either him or Travion Henderson. There was a thought the Steelers would take Hampton at 21. Hampton falls to the Chargers at 22. Not a direct piece that makes the passing game better, but the better the running game is, the more likely the passing game opens up. This could be good news for Justin Herbert and a Chargers team that made it to the playoffs last year. Even though the wild card round game in Houston didn't go all that well, they got to the postseason. With a guy like Hampton, if he can make an immediate impact, they can get back, and maybe they can advance this time. Aaron Rodgers is probably wondering where this commitment to a first-round receiver was when he was playing for the Packers. They typically don't go there. They went there tonight with pick number 23. Matthew Golden from the University of Texas, now a member of the Packers, and all those fans, you see the shots. So many people there at Lambeau Field for tonight's festivities. They had to be thrilled because that is clearly what they need. There was a time not that long ago it felt like maybe they had struck gold with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. It's not really working out. Now they get a speedy guy who can come in and maybe help them get the most out of Jordan Love, who 5 years ago, and yes, it's already been 5 years, that the Packers made Jordan Love their first-round pick and the successor to Aaron Rodgers. Now they're making the investment in the passing game in the form of Matthew Golden with the 23rd overall pick. Packers trying to add firepower to keep pace with the Lions and the Vikings and the Bears in the NFC North. The Vikings desperately need an improved offensive line. The pass blocking is fine. The run blocking isn't what it needs to be. And there's also an absence of an edge, an attitude. Jim Mora, the younger, used to say we need dirtbags on the offensive line. That doesn't mean rule breakers. That doesn't mean dirty players. That just means guys who will be physical when physicality is required and will win that ultimate battle of 1 versus 1 to push the pile in one direction or the other. So with that said, the Vikings now have added a new center and guard in free agency, and they add another guard, Donovan Jackson, with the 24th pick in the draft. The tackles are in place, Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill. The interior offensive line completely revamped. The Vikings going guard, trying to give themselves wall-to-wall, left side to right side, 5 guys who can get it done and take that offense to an even higher level. They had some glaring needs at safety. They can address those later. Any other needs they might have, address them later. For now, nail down that line and ensure that you've got 5 guys who can get it done, left tackle to right tackle. The Vikings hope that's what they've accomplished. The Giants have come a long way since, 6 weeks ago, their only quarterback on the roster was Tommy DeVito. They add Jameis Winston in free agency. They add Russell Wilson in free agency. And they don't take a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick, but they trade back into round 1, pick number 25, and they get their pick of any quarterback other than Cam Ward. Who are they going to take? What are they going to do? Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? No, it's Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart becomes the 2nd quarterback off the board, the 2nd first-rounder this year, and the guy that the Giants will now groom for the future as they balance present and future. They did this 21 years ago with Eli Manning. Remember, it was Kurt Warner. He was 5-4. He got benched. He wasn't happy, but the Eli Manning era began. The Giants trying to get back to another quarterback who can become the guy that fuels the offense. You still need to have a good offensive line. That needs work. They need a good defensive line. They worked on that earlier tonight with Abdul Carter. Now they come out of the draft with 2 first-round picks and a quarterback for 2026, and who knows? We'll see how it goes. The other wrinkle here, and we'll be breaking this down more Friday morning on PFT Live. You've got Dart, Wilson, Winston, DeVito. Somebody's gone. Somebody's going to be gone. And I think it's going to be Wilson or Winston. It's going to be a 2-man competition. The winner gets a water pick. The loser gets fired. I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. And the reality is Wilson got $10.25 million fully guaranteed. So it could be. Now, a guy could be traded or a guy could be released. It could be Jameis Winston, who's the odd man out when it's all said and done. They're not going to carry 4 quarterbacks into the regular season. At the very least, Tommy DeVito gets bumped to the practice squad, and you carry 3 on your full-time roster. I think the reality is one of the 2 veterans is going to be released and gone or traded. DeVito may end up on the practice squad. They'll carry 2, Jaxson Dart and whoever wins the competition between Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.